Friends, this is Sacred Frames. I'm Jeff Cook, movie Mike Yager, Sean Palmer. Welcome, gentlemen.
Hello.
Howdy.
We're talking about The Sheep Detective, which I was reluctant to see, and I'm so glad that I did go. Many thanks to Movie Mike for recommending good movies.
Three grown men talking about the CGI kids sheep movie, and we'll tell you why exactly.
I was in a pack theater sitting next to a man who is 300 pounds plus, and at least twice, both of us kind of sniffled and jerked a little bit and kind of looked at each other and tried to stifle it. And special movie. I thought I was just delighted to go here. Wanted to get some of your some introductory thoughts. Jump into this guy.
Well, let's just jump in and give you a quick plot synopsis. Presumably, if you're listening to this, you have at least a modicum of interest. But The Sheep Detectives, new movie written by Kyle Balda. We may talk about him, written by the writer Craig Mazin. Interestingly, the writer of Chernobyl and The Last of Us. That's tapping into a very
switching it up.
Similar kind of pathos that we'll get into. But the synopsis goes this way. Every night a shepherd reads aloud a murder mystery, pretending that his sheep, his flock, can understand. But when he is found dead, the sheep realize at once, or at least presume at once, that it was indeed a murder, and they think they know everything because of what they've been taught by their beloved shepherd on how to step forward into the world and solve it. So we have a murder mystery, a starter kit for our kids as they grow into the likes of Agatha Christie and Benoit Blanc and Nights Out and all that. So I thought this was a delightful movie. I came in with fairly high expectations, having gotten some good word of mouth, but also just seeing the cast involved. You've got Hugh Jackman, Nicholas Braun from Succession, Molly Gordon from The Bear, voices Julia Louis-Dreyfus, Patrick Stewart, Chris O'Dowd, probably favorite performance we'll talk about, Emma Thompson, like a murderer's row. So you get the sense that this maybe had something deeper going on than your kind of surface level manic kids movies that you might assume from the outside. So much sincerity and wit and warmth in what they come upon here. I'm really eager to get into the themes, but I'll hand it to you guys.
Yeah. So I assume by what you mean by surface level kids movies, you're talking about The Mandalorian and Grogu.
We'll get there.
I'm just jabbing. Jabbing. Yeah.
So no spoilers. I'm a Star Wars fan, and I'm seeing it tonight. So just as a heads up,
you will enjoy it, I think. So, one of my favorite reviews of this movie said that they were just really grateful for Knives Out 4. And at the beginning of the film, that's I'm watching it. We're 10 minutes in. I go, we're doing because I watch fewer and fewer trailers because I want to genuinely be surprised and astonished at films. And actually, as you guys know, the more films you watch, the more predictable films become to you, unless you can be surprised and all of that. And I was tired of depriving myself of that. So I don't watch very many trailers. So I knew very little about The Sheep Detectives going in. And you guys know, my friends know, I don't do a lot of kids movies. I'm not interested in animation, really. I didn't like kids movies really when I was a kid. And so it took me a beat to go, okay, I know what world I'm in. And so how are they going to do this with sheep? And Mike suggested it to us. I've suggested it to a number of people, and I've yet to find anyone who dislikes this film. Had a really touching moment with a friend of mine just earlier today. She is a young widow, mid-30s. And as you find out as the movie goes on, that the sheep have a certain belief about what happens to sheep when sheep die. And that belief is, you can get this from the trailer because I've since gone back and watched it. They believe that the dead sheep become clouds, right? And she was telling me today at lunch, she says, the part that really got me was as they were explaining death, my daughter leans over to me and goes, "So when I die, I'll get to see Daddy." And so like that's like the hugest theme of the movie, like the through line of the movie is talking about how these sheep are interpreting their world. And I think it's really easy to be sort of cynical adults, and if this were happening to human characters on the screen, we would almost roll our eyes, but because it happens to sheep, we just kind of open up just a little, like Mike talking about the guy sitting next to him, and like we're open to it in a way that we wouldn't be before.
To build on that, I think we're going to talk about death quite a bit here, but overwhelming thing for me leaving was that this was a movie that created a safe place to deal with loss and grief, and that's really tough to pull off. I'm going to probably spoil a bunch of stuff up front, so I would just, like, before moving into spoilers, I would just say you should go see this movie. It's a great movie. I couldn't recommend it enough. So,
I would say this: if you haven't seen the movie and you don't want spoilers, whatever you're listening this on, like, keep it playing so we get the hit that you listen to it. But just turn down the volume to the end and then go watch the movie, and then come back and listen to it from here on. Is that fair?
Yeah, and we would say, look, if you know your kids better than we do, but I went with my 10 and 12-year-old. They both loved it. I think that any older elementary, or even the kids that have a mindfulness and a curiosity for these deeper existential questions, like I think that the greatest compliment I can give to this film, or really any family film, is that it displays a great respect for its audience, no matter the age. And that makes it worthy for a family to really dig into together, because it leads to just beautiful conversations. So watch that with your family. It should be streaming on Amazon soon, if it's not already by the time you hear this, or it may still be in theaters. So get to that. But we're going to get into spoilers.
But if you want to sit next to a 300-pound man, you're going to have to probably go to it.
Now! Rush there. Exactly.
Yes. Like, you never know.
To build on that for a second, I hadn't realized how much I appreciated this from Pixar 10, 15 years ago, where they were creating movies that really, it was like kids could go, but lots of adult themes, and they just like intertwined very cleanly to be that kind of experience. I don't know that I can remember a movie like that here recently where I was like, they're nailing it, kind of for both audiences. But I went into this movie thinking that this was going to be a Knives Out movie, and I was in it for that. I was like, oh, okay, this is great. And like 10 minutes in, I'm like, holy crap, this is Chicken Run is what it is. And I'm a huge Chicken Run fan, so I was really excited. And then once there's a murder, I went, oh, this is Scream for kids, except for it's not horror, it's mystery. They know the rules.
The moment in which we first get George Hardy, Farmer George, Hugh Jackman is laying dead outside his trailer in the middle of this field, and what does Lily say? It's Lily, and played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and Mopple, and she thinks, oh, he's playing a game. Like from the beginning, like there's this, you're given the context of they have no sense of the actuality.
No context for a human dying outside of the books that he's been reading, and so it's like for them, he's laying there dead, and it's like, oh, like maybe this is like the next step of this really fun thing that we do, kind of as a family, but no.
Talking about how they think it's a game when they find George laying there in front of the trailer,
right?
So yeah, it fills you with that dread of them not really knowing what is facing them, right in front of them. They still think it's fun and play, and here we have this very real thing is happening, and we feel the loss that it is, because we've had these few minutes with Farmer George, and I think Hugh Jackman gives a really incredible performance in a very short amount of time, and it's kind of low-hanging fruit for someone with his level of skill and innate charisma, but he is this good shepherd that we instantly root for, and we instantly trust with the lives of these sheep, all of whom, it should be said, and it's obvious, but it's obvious because it's good, thematic filmmaking, because he knows all of them by name.
Yeah. I mean, I saw this like you did with my kids, but the difference, Mike, is that mine are 22 and 19, right? And here's what the film pulls off on that front that's really remarkable. It is a significantly theological movie.
Yes, it is.
But it doesn't feel or sound cheesy like a lot of Christian movies. It's a theological movie without being a sermon.
Yes.
Right? Because he doesn't worry himself with like the tropes of trying to make sure you get the point, which was the Achilles heel of almost every Christian movie. Is like they're so worried about you getting the point, they'll beat you over the head with it. And he's like, no, like we're gonna treat these people as if they are not idiots, right? That line early in the movie, he's invisible, he's bread, he's a lamb, and they eat him on Sundays.
Yeah, I transcribed that whole scene just because we really need to hear it in its full, just because it's so beautiful. What is this? This is the church where someone named God lived. Who's God? It's a bit confusing. God is a shepherd. So he could be our shepherd? No, because he's also a lamb. What? Oh, and he's also invisible. And he's made of bread. And he dams things. Dams things? Like a beaver? Yes. So God is a big invisible lamb beaver made of bread. Yes. And they eat him on Sundays. To which Mopple replies, poor God. It's perfect. No notes.
Yeah.
Written by somebody who grew up in the church.
Yeah, like you
I
only get that. Like you're not stumbling across. AI is not giving you that piece of dialogue. And so like that's what I think if I'm thinking through what resonates with people, and I think that the three of us would agree, and probably most of the folks who listen to us, that there is something deeply resonant in the story of Jesus. And so what's resonating with people, whether you know the Bible well or not, are these ideas that have resonated for 2,000 years about this good shepherd. And then about like what it means to be a sheep. Like one of the things I loved about the movie, which I make sure to mention every time that I preach on the shepherd the sheep know the shepherd's voice, is for hundreds of years people have been talking about how dumb sheep are, right? And even in our culture, when you want to say someone just sort of passively follows, you say, well, they're sheep, and that's actually not true. That sheep are not dumb, but they are leader led, and so much so that they follow the voice that they have come to trust, and they don't necessarily give that trust easily. So it's like, oh, you're a sheep because you just blindly follow. No, that's like the way they're made, but real sheep, not human sheep, actually are pretty discerning about that voice.
Lots of affection from these sheep, which moved me many, many times in this movie. Earned affection. In fact, the first thing I wrote down walking out was, our shepherd has been murdered. Now what? Is one way you could describe the primary theme of the New Testament.
It's really dripping with theological content. And if you don't know any of it, you might miss all of it. Right.
Yep, right.
And that's what's kind of brilliant about the film.
Yeah, I don't know that we can go any further without entering into the category of what I think is the key conceit of certainly the setup of the film. And so what the Sheep Detectives presupposes is that sheep have not only are they, these mindless followers as depicted, but they have this innate ability to consciously forget and to push out any uncomfortable feelings that they may happen upon. And so this is just how they've come to exist, with this ignorance is genuinely, sincerely bliss. And so the ability to reckon with this real death that's happened in front of them requires them first to not push it out. And you see this whole group discernment. Well, we can't change this. We're just going to forget Farmer George right now. We're going to do it all together. And Lily, the kind of main sheep, she's our hero sheep, voiced by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, and she realizes, in concert with Mopple, and we got to talk about Mopple because he's the one sheep who carries the cross, so to speak, of the collective memory, the collective grief and trauma for the whole group. And she, trusts him in this moment, saying, okay, if we need to remember to face what comes next, then so be it. But that's just such a critical point of departure for us, because, if we operate without the knowledge and the remembrance of our shepherd having been murdered, then, how troubled are we about really anything?
I recall "Do This in Remembrance of Me" is a big thing in the Christian tradition. In fact, remember is just you guys will remind me. It's all over the Old Testament in terms of remember, I'm the God that brought you out of Egypt. Celebrate these things, and remembrance seems to me core to spirituality. And this whole movie is about engaging one's soul.
It really is at the center. Remembering's at the center of what it means. And so to be a spiritual person, and it comes over and over and over. And I can't remember what book I read a couple years ago, but he starts with saying that for this guy's kind of late in his ministry, 50 years in ministry. And he says early in the book that he sees his ministry as the ministry of reminding, Yeah. And then there are lots of studies done that human beings are not good people until we are reminded to be good people. Kind of left on our own, doing our own thing, but someone comes along and reminds us, no, we're not going to do that for X, Y, and Z. We're not going to become these or those kinds of people. But I mean, that's one of the great themes of the movie, right? Is because we want to be able to forget the bad things, to get through them as soon as possible. And what they learn in the course of the film is to, like what Mike just said, to do the thing that they have to do the good thing. They have to remember. And then you couple that with folks who say you live as long as the last person who remembers you. So it's really doing a lot of theological work that this is what I think Mason is trying to say. If we were just to choose on our own, we would forget the bad things as soon as we possibly could. But we would never develop into better people if we forgot the bad things. And we could not be people who were about justice or holding people to account or moving civilization, church, families forward, if we don't remember. And people sideswipe that or try to step by it for the sake of avoiding their own pain, for our own pain. Let's get this over. But it's from that remembrance that we actually grow and develop and become better for others.
Yeah, there's no genuine resilience. There's no genuine hope without having traveled through that experience of pain and grief. Like the only way is through. Like I one of the moments that I found so heartbreaking, we mentioned before, given this cognitive dissonance among the flock, and Lily's asking questions about, what happens when the sheeps die, and they become the clouds, and Lily, it's heartbreaking when she says, well, isn't it funny? Isn't it strange that I don't remember the day that my parents became clouds? It must have been so beautiful. To which Mopple just has to hold that along with everything else, because something has been stolen from her, having been unable to truly grieve this loss, because it's just been, papered over with a meaningful metaphor, but a metaphor nonetheless.
Which, and Jeff, you're the resident philosopher here, so you can answer this question for, can something be beautiful if it's not true? And I think something can be pretty, and something can be desirable. So it's like someone coming out of plastic surgery, right? Like the conveyor belt of plastic surgery. Like, it can be pretty, it can be desirable, it can be enticing and tantalizing, but can it be beautiful if it's not true? And I'm thinking about the Pope saying what's truly important is the good, the true, and the beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So I've got a philosophical question for you, and that turned into a Catholic question for Mike.
I think you're using a metaphor, or it's a poetic way of saying it, because we know what it means for something to be beautiful because it's true, but it's not like the proposition has a truth value. It's something else. It's exposing, it's unveiling, it showcases in clean imagery or sound something that we long to think is part of the fabric of reality. And we've had a connection with reality at its deepest levels through the thing. That's what I'm hearing from that phrase. I don't know how to unpack that. I feel like that's huge, though.
I have not read Pope Leo's encyclical on AI as of yet, but I do imagine that I will find many places of agreement. So all I was going to say, without spoilers for Mandalorian and Grogu, there is one really effective stretch of that film, a very effective stretch, when we are left in the cinematic care of our friend Grogu in his puppety form alongside some other puppety friends. And though not much is narratively happening or even really being said, it kind of becomes a silent film for a brief window of time there. There is a tactility that just carries a different level of interest and engagement immediately. And the first hour of the film, which is functionally, Mando flying from one CGI planet to the next in one, succession. And I couldn't care less, because I know how not real all of this stuff is. So more and more, I'm just longing for something in front of a camera that we are actually filming and embodied, in this work of storytelling, especially in the AI age. Like, the embodiment is all the more critical. Having just spent the past couple months in the theater and the live theater mode, reminds me all the more of that. This is the spaces that we are all longing for, and we can tell the difference. And I think it's when it's the AI, the artificial thing, something in our brain clicks off because it's instinctual.
Yeah, speaking of what's true, right?
And do you feel like that's a moment in our age. Like I so much of the work that I'm doing now in my own writing and thinking is about what it means to be. And I used to hate, like 5 years ago, I would have hated this when people had talked about like what it means to be human. And I was like, oh gosh, like get up, wake up in the morning and breathe air. You're human. You're fine. Go on. But with so much social media and AI, I have spent more time really thinking about this, like reading books like Against the Machine and other. I mean, like, and at the same time, I was like, this is one of the great things about kids' movies, and I know we're going to talk about family movies a little bit later. Is there, going back to telling it slant, right? That there are some topics that are really hard for even adults to face head on. And so the purpose of a movie like The Sheep Detectives, yes, it does give kids a way to start to think and process their lived experience, especially like my friend I spoke about earlier who had a child who is whose father is deceased, but it also gives adults ways to talk about these really important life and death issues without feeling like they're having to go to therapy or sit in a seminar, a way to ruminate on what is good and true and beautiful without making them feel like they should have figured this out already.
That was one of the things that really, I mentioned it before, but let's talk about death for a minute, and pain and meaning and truth and beauty. One of the most cutting lines of any piece of literature, in my view, is from the Velveteen Rabbit on this front, and it's about death and pain. And it's there's a character in the Velveteen Rabbit that's been a stuffed animal that's been loved a long time and kind of beat up, and there's a new kind of rabbit who's stuffed animal that's kind of introduced to the world, and they're talking about what's real. And the rabbit asks this horse character what's real, and the horse says, real isn't how you're made. It's a thing that happens to you. When a child loves you for a long, long time, not just to play with, but really loves you, then you become real. And the rabbit asks if it hurts, and the horse says, sometimes. But when you're real, you don't mind being hurt. It doesn't happen at once. You become. It takes a long time, and that's why it doesn't often happen to people who break easily or have sharp edges or have to be carefully kept. Generally, by the time you're real, most of your hair's been loved off and your eyes drop out and you get loose in the joints and very shabby. But those things don't matter at all, because once you're real, you can't be ugly except to people who don't understand. Children's book. I don't know that there's a better line for me about the value of pain than that one.
Amen.
Yeah. Why I asked that question about, can something be beautiful if it's not true? Like, which is my way of saying if it's not real. It can be metaphorically, but I think about all of the people who stand at their 50th anniversary, right? And say like, I married the most beautiful woman in the world. And the rest of us are like, no, you did not. Right?
Sure.
And I can look at pictures of her from 50 years ago. It wasn't just age that did it, right? But there is something about like, and I think that's one of the things that's really powerful about the sheep metaphor. Like, George loves these sheep, not so much because of their utility, right? Especially at this point, because we find out through the movie that he's done some things that have put him in a financial position that's very secure. But he loves them for the sake of loving them, and cares for them for the sake of, I mean, most people, if they could retire from their work because they were in a financial position that they never had to worry about it again, would. But his work is the same. And so it has then demonstrated to the world, like, this is a work of love, which is why he won't do the other things that more commercial shepherds in the film and in our world are asking him to do. And so I think this is one of those places in the film why people cry during this film, because I think everyone wants to be loved like that, to be at a place where they are welcomed and received and loved simply for their being, like because what we say in that is like, I see the beauty in you, and no one else has to see it. But I'm calling it out of you.
Because he sees he calls out the goodness in their particularity. Like he names the sheep by their blessing, not their utility. Like those two things being very different things. I think you've said it really well, and that's like, I think if I'm remembering correctly, like the opening narration really is Father, or shortly thereafter is George introducing us to all of the the sheep by Lily's the smart one, and Mopple's the wise one, or it's they all have their attributes that then like us, members of one body, we become greater than the sum of our parts when existing in concert with one another. I think that's like one of the themes that it really underscores beautifully in that regard.
Notice on that, it's the love from that character, from the shepherd, that gives them differentiation, because the other sheep who are being used for utility are all the same. They all look the same. They all have the bells, and they're all getting ready for slaughter. It's the love of the shepherd that actually brings specificity and elevates their gifting, elevates their unique contribution to the land, and etc. That's fabulous.
And you see that really clearly when you talk about Sebastian, who was my favorite of the sheep.
Was this the winter sheep?
No.
Or is he the big one?
He's the winter ram, right?
From mistreatment in the zoo where he's having to fight.
Yeah.
And who he in a second becomes my favorite of all the, and it's almost like what's going to happen with it. But like, to Mike's point, every one of them offers their gift, right? To the community. Now, my daughters watch this film with me, and they have some questions for George about the winter lamb and what he's letting go down in the flock around the winter lamb. But like, even the winter lamb, like in the end, offers his gift for the flock. And so obviously, again, it's a deeply theological movie without being cheesy or overbearing. And that's just super rare. That's what I love most about it.
Well, the shepherd can't force the belonging of the winter lamb. But the shepherd does not exclude the winter lamb. In fact, like, it constantly goes out to pursue and to check on. And like, I know that there is that those layers of neglect, but that's the community neglect. Like,
ask my daughters and they will tell you that George could have given the rest of the flock a little talking to about the winter lamb.
George was embodying acceptance and love. Are they dumb? Are sheep dumb? Can they not see that this is how it's supposed to be? If God can love this person, y'all need to get in line.
Yeah, and so I mean, there is something powerful about communal behavior, and like, this is what we always do to winter lambs. I mean, this is one of the. I came home and started like doing some reading about how winter lambs are actually treated. Like, I was like, it was so bothersome to me. It's like, is that, because I was like, is that true? I don't know anything about winter lambs. Which is what my piece on Good Faith Media was about receiving the winter lamb. But that again is like demonstrable of the story of the church, is even like the Jew-Gentile issue in the first century. That's the way that the rest of the world works. And that's the way that we've always treated people of this class. But in this community, we're going to function differently. So anyway, I mean, it's such a super layered movie. I need to see it again. Like Mike talked about. And because I think there's even more there than I caught the first time around.
I want to pitch 3 quotes to wrap up the remembrance and death stuff here, and then we could talk about some of the other themes. But the money quotes for me were, sheep aren't meant to forget such things. It's not true if I don't remember. And I remember every bad thing, but I remember good things too.
Yes.
Those are money lines for me. And expose the heart of the movie in terms of, I think what you were saying, like so often in my experience, the past is such a realm of sadness to avoid that I don't do proper business with it in such a way as to find the places that are worthy of elevation in my heart, and elevated alongside the places that were hard, such that it creates that, kaleidoscopic picture of the past that I've lived,
Yeah, one of the, I think, greatest pastoral tools that I've been given along this journey. I had the chance to partake in this counseling program at a seminary in Seattle, the Allender Center, if anyone may be familiar, and did a certificate program in story work. And so we would bring these personal narratives to each of these weekends, working with our small group cohort, and to walk back through these narratives was to put yourself back to relive, in essence, these very traumatic events and memories, but then to do so in a way where you embody, in some sense, via the accessing the memory, the Holy Spirit, the Christ, the presence of God within, that then joins you in the grief and in the pain, in the what was lamentable and grievous and even heinous about these chapters in our journeys. And then we carry that forward in a way that we then sit with and are present, to and alongside others as we're like, it's go back to the Rumi thing. Like we're just walking one another home, and none of us are the shepherd. Like we're just another sheep in the flock. And so, walking in that kind of humility and shared remembrance that can't undo the thing, but knows that there was a loving presence even then in that place of seeming forsakenness. Like that's the road of healing that I continue to be so grateful to walk alongside others. It's a privilege.
Let me build on that for a second, because another big theme for me in this movie was loyalty and the fact that we're all in this together. The walking each other home, Rumi quote, I think is a great illustration. The most moving moment for me was the 2 sheep walking across the road, pushing into one another in that space. And I've already forgot some of the language because I was crying through it. Like just how lovely it was that they were moving forward together in this place of fear, yet devoted to each other, even just taking some small steps. And it was just that element of the community exposed. And again, with love for their shepherd and each other. I found that very moving.
Yeah. I was raised in Churches of Christ, and about 30, 40 years ago, one of the leaders in it wrote this book about, because it's lay leader-led churches, right? So the end of the polity ends with lay people, not the clergy, right? And he wrote this book inviting folks into the shepherding metaphor, which everyone who read took on the metaphor, but not any of the behaviors, right? But anyway, the book was called They Smell Like Sheep. Right. And so this came to mind for me when the Winter Lamb, describing what he saw the night George died. And he says, I saw George's ghost. It smelled like him. And there are like a few things in that for me. Is one, if you have a dog, you know, they actually do, like, they know what time it is. Like my dog knows when it's time for other people to come home at the end of the day, not because she can tell time, but the smell of that person fades over the course of the day. And they know kind of like at this smell level, this is about when so-and-so comes home. Right. And my daughter's notorious for stealing my sweatshirts. And they will wear them, and I will see them in them and say, is that my sweatshirt? And they will look at me in the face and say, no. Right? But then they will mysteriously reappear in my laundry. And I asked my oldest when she was maybe 15, like, you've been like wearing them, like, why did you bring it back? And she said, it no longer smelled like daddy.
No.
And so there's this thing about intimacy with one another, and like the things that you really love. And I was like, what if we could live in a world, where you are the kind of person that the people, even the pets you knew, like, longed for you on I truly mean this, like on the level of the senses, and that your presence in their senses was meaningful to them. And there was a lack of, they felt less when they couldn't sense you through their five senses. Which I think is probably going to like reframe to me, like all of the shepherding metaphors. Cause like Psalm 23, for instance, like, is this invitation and expression of intimacy? And it's, the Lord is my shepherd, right? And just like carry that through, like, that I feel God at the level of my senses and feel distant from God at the level of my senses. Not when because what happens is we experience a trauma or a death and we go like, where's God? But not like, I woke up today and like, it doesn't smell the same. Anyway, I just think like that would be interesting to explore. I have no landing spot on any of that. It's just rattling around in the middle of my head.
No, there's something, and this was a big critique when we were doing church work and starting our church, was just how stripped of the sensory experiences a lot of the churches that we grew up in ended up becoming. And yet you look at the scriptures and so much of it is very visceral. You hear the trumpets, you smell the cooking meat, you take and eat, you know, the embodiment, the dancing, the coloring of all of your senses in experiences, sensational experiences that communicate something with depth and base and body. So often the spirituality that I communicate on Twitter lacks that. And that's why it doesn't do shit when I say something on Twitter. You know, it's like, let me tell you about making love to somebody. And it's just all, what's the least worthy way of, you know, a medium for communicating that. It's that element.
Yeah. Anyway.
Well, the thought that's coming to mind as you guys are no, I think there's so much there. It has me thinking about the sheep in the neighboring sheepfold.
Yeah.
A lot. So there, you know, we're not even really necessarily talking about the plot of the film so much, which, you know, there's not much to it as a mystery. It's
a whodunit.
It's sort of okay. Like, I think that I don't, you know, think of myself as a genius or anything, but I had a sense of where things were heading kind of well before that point. But, you know, we travel into this next sheepfold and we get a sense of what is being denied, and you know, not just the winter lambs by choice among the, you know, the seemingly family of belonging, but now in this neighboring fold, these sheep that are being used for their meat that are going to be ultimately slaughtered, and they are part of a scheme with, perhaps one of the rival shepherds and a local butcher, working together. So that this is all going on. But then Sebastian and Lily and Mopple, they are going to kind of find some information from these neighbor sheep, and they find themselves in a place of real peril. And it is a very alarming scene for any film, let alone a kids movie. I know that Mara was clinging to me for a moment.
True.
And I think to me that draws a really a close parallel to the kind of forces that are ravenous in our own world at protecting their control over these sheep that the true shepherd wants freed. I keep going back to what I wrote it down, John 10:16, in the midst of this passage on the good shepherd. No, I have other sheep that don't belong to this fold. I must bring them also. It's always about pulling in more and more those who have been undignified by exclusion or undignified by broken and abusive and oppressive systems, like we see in the neighboring farm.
Yeah.
So
What I hear there is expansive love and restorative. With that is restorative quality. Go ahead, Sean.
I do have one nit to pick. So we get toward the end. I found a couple of choices by a few characters at the end to be unsatisfying.
My only thought on this regard, and it will, I guess, sound like a spoiler, maybe, but it has me very dubious as to the prospects of one Masters of the Universe.
Yeah, so I was with this is not a spoiler because you can look this up. We're literally in the theater, and when he shows up, my daughter Kate goes, "What's Nicholas Gallatin doing here?" And I was like, "Well, he probably wants one movie this summer that's going to work." Well, let's talk.
It works in spite of him, I will say. But I shouldn't dog on Gallatin. He's really good in the Anne Hathaway movie, the Idea of You. There you go.
Well, let's talk about family movies. So we spent while talking about.
Did you want to talk about villains real quick?
The
Sean?
villains.
You brought this up. I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, that the villain in this movie is ultimately greed. And so, and there are two kinds of greed at play in the film. I don't want to spoil what those are or how those work. But I'm always one of those people, because I've been watching a lot of movies made in the mid to late 70s in the last 12 months, last year or so, that movies don't come out of nowhere. That particular art is made at a particular time for a particular reason. And so in the late 70s, in the shadow of Watergate, and really we don't think about it now because it's progressed so much, new kinds of technology. And like, what do you get? You get All the President's Men, you get Network, you get films like The Conversation, The French Connection, Parallax View. And I think if we're paying close attention, like, look at the movies that have popped culturally this year. Project Hail Mary, Sheep Detectives. They're all about goodness and the goodness we find in one another, and about hope. They're about care for one another. You know, that great line that Sandra Hüller has in Project Hail Mary, and when she says, like, we could do this, like, I wouldn't have to do this if all the nations of the world would do the right thing, but we all know they're not going to. Right?
They won't.
And so I think a wise exegete of culture and the scriptures would say, this is actually what the Christian community and the world at large is dying to hear right now. A positive, forward-looking, hopeful, communally centered love for the other. And the reason we look for things is always as a reaction to what's going on in the world. So President Obama had a article that came out today about music and the power of music throughout American history. And it just basically goes through, our artists are always there before our politics are, right?
Yeah.
And I want to say something similar, and I might write about this on my Substack, that our artists are always there before our clergy are. So when the villain is greed, that's saying something, and the villain kind of is greed in Project Hail Mary. World's not going to do the right thing. What is that saying about the world we live in, and what is that inviting? What kind of new imagination is that inviting us into? So that's my take on greed and the sheep detectives.
I'm going to leave it there. I can't say it better than that. So that's great.
I hadn't thought about clearly the murderer in this movie is choosing wealth over choosing what could be the most important relationship he might get a chance to experience on that front. Like, we see the wealth of care that the shepherd pours out, and all forsaken for a bowl of soup, as it were.
Yeah. Well, and even worse than that, the murderer in this movie could have gotten what he wanted by knocking on the door and speaking the truth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, it was
Yeah.
like all that didn't have to happen. But what is it in our world right now that says, like, if you want wealth, you have to be duplicitous to get it?
Well, yeah, there's a very interesting inversion, in a sense, of the parable of the prodigal in the story, because we are, we're fully in spoilers. We are talking not just about, a father and child. We're, talking about a father and multiple children who come to a very, very, very different recognitions of the nature of those relationships, and I think where the film ends with this baton pass of sorts is just a very beautiful grace note. It's not a triumphant shout from the rafters kind of ending, but it's exactly the kind of ending that this story warrants. Is the new life for this flock, in very in the continuity of care that then carries forward with them all having embraced who they are as a collective, including those left outside to that point. Like, it's very much the church, it's, Sean, I wrote down a little piece from your review there in Good Faith Media. Yeah, that there's always been the kind of Christian who wants to build a wall. There's been one at every revival, every Pentecost, every awakening, holding a clipboard and a list of acceptable arrival times. They are still in our churches. And they tell immigrants and women and the poor and anyone who is other that they will be welcome once they meet a few preconditions. And here we are living in a world and in a day and age and in a nation where, like, this is just painfully, exhaustingly day to day true. We cannot get away from it. This insistence on othering, it's killing us. And so this film was just, for the moment, an antidote. We need a whole lot more like it, but we actually need to bring these stories into real life, because this is, again, it's one more piece of artifice. So it's pretty, but is it true?
Right.
To go back to one of the things we've been talking about.
To build on that, the thing is, I hadn't matched it with contemporary issues. It was very escapist for me, and sometimes it's what actually needs to take place. You see this in Tolkien's own understanding of Tolkien's work, is that he's not writing escapist fantasy. He's writing things that are actually true and inviting people to remember this is how reality actually is, as opposed to the shadows that we so often live in. I never thought of this as a critique.
Yeah. Well,
and you're exactly right that this is about there is a better way, and just being reminded, bathing in it, and laughing for a minute is perhaps the best thing that can be said. I love that both of you guys have brought that up.
well, I think all art is a critique. like I gotta like my fundamental feeling is like that's why it exists, because you have to you have to come in a side door or the back door or a window for some people, and there's so often like folks will like even with this movie like really love it, and they'll talk about the winter lamb, and that gives you the opportunity to go like, oh really, like do you really believe that? Because which is what I was trying to do with a good faith media piece with the winter lamb, is like you like the cute little lamb, but that is emblematic of something that's far more important, that if I just rammed it down your throat, you wouldn't go for. So
Yeah, I suppose last theme there. Do you want any words on the two winter lambs that are in this? Is there a third winter lamb that I'm not thinking of? And what the movie is seeking to communicate through those two characters?
and none other than my daughters thought the winter lamb was really cute, and
Well, again, and this is not to spoil the very end of the film, but I will say that the shepherd knows all of the names of the sheep, the winter lamb very much included. You know, though we wait until the closing moments to hear that name spoken aloud for the first time, it is perfectly fitting and seems like it was right all along. And like that, and it just one more of those moments where, oh, here I am, I'm just bawling. Like, you're gonna need to, like, my kids are trying to leave because they're like, hey, I gotta go to the bathroom, we're gonna go have dinner. I'm like, I need a minute, I'm gonna sit here and watch the credits and just gently weep and compose myself, and then we will carry on with the rest of our day.
Well, that's excellent. I love this discussion. I love the themes that came out in this movie. Very impressive task by the filmmakers and creators, and something that was much needed, I think. So I hope a lot of people get a chance to see it. We did want to end with 3 family film recommendations from each of us, just in case you want to keep the ball rolling. So wanted to find, what's your definition of a family film, and let's jump into it.
well, that's a great question. I didn't write a definition of family film because that category becomes so complicated. I think anthropologically, because of what makes a family. I always hated when Rochelle and I didn't, before we had kids, and people would say something that would suggest that we're not a family, right? And now that my children are adults, like, we're still a family. But I think what people generally mean is something G or low PG rated that folks with elementary age kids could go to and mom and dad not feel embarrassed for having taken them. So not like me not doing my proper work and sitting next to my 20-year-old watching Poor Things a couple of years ago, and both of us being more uncomfortable than any two people should ever feel. So I am on the low man on the totem pole when it comes to family movies, because like I said, I didn't like them when I was a kid. And so I'm going to give you 3, and none of them are surprises for people who don't like kid movies, and they're all classics. So the classic of my childhood was Willy Wonka, the old Gene Wilder version, where with indescript accents, and you don't know where in the world this is taking place, but you know it's someplace European. And Charlie's mom is in there, tub washing laundry while Grandpa Joe has been laying in the bed for 24 years, not doing a single thing, but he can hop up and start dancing when he gets a chance at some chocolate. But I love that movie when I was a kid. Then 2.
Can I say something about Willy Wonka real quick? First movie-going experience for me, still the most bizarre or like out of this world. It's one of the few memories I have of my mom and dad together. It's the only movie I've ever been to where they had a full orchestra. We went to see it in a space where they had an orchestra play the soundtrack alongside the film as it was going. And I remember we got Juji fruits. And I will always associate Juji fruits with Willy Wonka because I couldn't get them out of my teeth afterwards.
It's a powerful memory.
And I was terrified of, a quarter of that movie. It was a little too much for me. So
for me, Willy Wonka was
a classic.
We can't go out for recess because it's raining. So the teachers put on Willy Wonka.
But on Willy Wonka. Funny.
Okay, second, The Princess Bride.
Ooh, good
complete classic. Good for all seasons, all people, everywhere. And then my third, which I was actually surprised by because it was well past when I had given up on animation, and not necessarily new, but The Incredibles. We'll sit down and watch The Incredibles almost any time that I find it just sort of on someplace. So those are my 3. Mike's are going to be way more up to date.
Oh no, because I'm gonna go. I'll start all the way back in 1956.
Woo!
So
Party time.
I grabbed a couple. So all 3 of these are streaming right now on HBO Max. Because it's hard to just find stuff on any number of a dozen different streaming services now. So The Red Balloon. It's a French movie. Director Albert Le Maurice. It's maybe 35 minutes long, and it's basically about this young French boy who he kind of befriends this sentient balloon and follows it through the streets of Paris. And
there is nothing more Mike than when asked for a family movie to come up with a 70-year-old French film.
I'm going to finish. It's basically wordless. It's like a silent film. So you don't need to know French. There's no subtitles. That doesn't matter.
What kid is watching this movie?
And I won't tell you what happens because it's one of the great surprises in all of film. So there you go. Red Balloon, best half an hour you've had all week. 30 years later, Kiki's Delivery Service, 1988. I could talk about any number of Hayao Miyazaki movies. This one is very close to my heart. Because it's a film I've seen multiple times in the company of my daughter, Mara, and it's one that is extremely meaningful for us. This young witch who goes off into the world. She turns 13 and she's got to go out on her, Mormon mission. And anyways, but she becomes a delivery girl in this little seaside village based on an old novel, but beautiful hand-drawn animation, just a lovely story about stepping out into the world and trying to figure out how do I do this on my own. It's such a lovely text. And then 30 years after that, 2018, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know, that Paddington 2 is a absolute 5-star masterpiece. I watch it when I have had a bad day and I just need a lift, because it is an experience of empathy and community and just this goodwill that ripples forth and overcomes any challenge in front of us when we do it together. It's absolute hokum, but I still believe in it.
So I thought Mike's third movie was going to be, there's a hand-drawn tablet of Walt Disney's first movie, and you just flip through it yourself. And he wrote it in Sanskrit.
I actually have seen The Red Balloon. I haven't seen the other 2, and I've heard Paddington 2 is amazing, and I don't know how that's been missed.
I've heard of The Red Balloon, but not watched it.
My 3, I started off with it. I don't know if it, but 2 of my best movie-going experiences were The Matrix and Chicken Run. I love the hell out of Chicken Run and can watch it on a loop. I think it's so funny and it just is it hit that whatever that spot is for me of humor, beauty. I just as a family film.
Okay, Jeff, can I make a guess
Delightful.
before you do your next two?
Please.
Is one of your final two going to be Ratatouille?
It is not, but one of them does have a rat. I love Ratatouille. I think Ratatouille is a gorgeous film. We're going to cover it on movie typing here soon. But a movie that we actually have covered on movie typing is The Secret of NIMH, which themes of loyalty and courage in the movie that we just saw, Sheep Detective. Secret of NIMH, I think, is just a fantastic exploration of courage and just a beautiful 1980s movie that's both terrifying and wonderful to look at and has just that mixture of overlapping the fantastic with, I don't know what you call that rescuers kind of world where it's the world of mice and they're using human items to create elevators but then you throw in a steep dose of magic. Just love the hell out of Secret of NIMH. Anyway, and the last one I had was the Muppet movie, which everyone needs to sign the standard rich and famous contract sometime in their life and pursue that as their passion. The standard rich and famous contract makes me laugh every time. But in terms of like the movie, I think that pushes my melancholy button the most. Muppet movie.
Okay, real quick, because I know we're running out of time, but I'd love to know this. What will be your fourth movie, the one that didn't make the cut?
Well, I would have to put. I mean, Star Wars would probably be there because it's G. I think it's a G movie. Is it G movie?
I'll just insert this one thought. Since we've been on the topic of these movie murder mysteries, I didn't come up with this idea, but I would kill for a Knives Out movie in which Benoit Blanc was the only human being and the rest of the movie was Muppets. That is $100 million movie.
The crossover potential is enormous.
That actually sounds really good. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like that actually sounds. I would be lined up at the theater for that.
Take my money. Did you have one? A fourth one, or
well,
were you
I did.
just curious?
It's so obscure. It's made a comeback in the last 3 years, but it's Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas, and I just adore that movie. It went into nothingness for a long time, but it was what Jim Henson's proof of concept to make the first Muppets movie. And it was done just to prove that a movie with puppets could work, but he didn't want to burn the characters if it didn't work. So Kermit the Frog is in it at the very beginning and the very end as a narrator. But he didn't want, like, if it didn't work, folks to be like, nobody likes Kermit the Frog. You see what happens. So it is about a mother and a son, and they compete in a local talent contest to win enough money to buy the other a Christmas gift, but in doing so, they have to destroy the thing that the other one cherishes the most, to be in a position to win the competition. And so, I mean, it's working on a lot of levels. It's Emmett Otter's Jug Band Christmas. Every Christmas at my house, without fail, we're spinning that one.
I thought of my fourth. You got a fourth, Mike, just to throw in?
Oh, mine was the Knives Out thing. I'm just thinking about puppets and how much fun you're going to have seeing our buddy Grogu tonight, Jeff.
There you go. My fourth, sitting on my shelf. Like, if you have not seen the 70s version of the cartoon, The Hobbit, this is much better than the live action. It's a good little family film. And anyone who grew up on that, they know all the songs and good times. All right, that's what I got. Picking up, do we have any movies in mind moving forward?
We'll be back.
We'll be back, works.